The US has always been a hegemonic player, which believes that the norms of international law are not applicable to it. History has seen that the nations which put up a challenge to its dominance become victims of unprecedented political and economic doom. In the 20th century, the US used the pretext of communism to interfere in the internal affairs of several sovereign countries. Unfortunately, the then mainstream media depicted Washington's such efforts as noble and humanitarian. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, as more and more nations came out of the shadow of communism, the US employed and mastered another strategy in its attack to win countries in its favor. Yes, the strategy comprised the use of ethnic cleansing, coup, and coercion. Hi and welcome to TFIGlobal, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI media group. I'm your host Atul Mishra. Let's begin. The political violence that occurred in Indonesia from 1965 to 1966 is one such example of the tactic that we're talking about. The then Indonesian government massacred an estimated 500,000 to 2 million supporters of leftist leader General Sukarno. The killings were ordered by the then US President Lyndon Johnson. The hostility of Washington against Sukarno's regime grew in the wake of his policies, which included land reform and nationalization of natural resources. The US government, fearing that a wave of communism in Indonesia can have a domino effect, ordered a coup. In October 1965, the pro-US General Suharto replaced Sukarno as the leader of Indonesia. After coming into power, Washington provided arms, training, equipment, and lists of thousands of supporters of Sukarno to Suharto's administration. The US followed the same pattern in the case of Ukraine. From 2003 to 2009, just 20% of Ukrainians favored becoming member of NATO, whereas 55% were against the notion. Moreover, in 2010, around 40% of Ukrainians viewed NATO as a threat to their nation. However, following the coup ordered by the Obama administration in Ukraine in February 2014, the public perception of Ukraine toward the West drastically changed. Prominent businessmen who funded Ukrainian politics and owned the mainstream media led a propaganda campaign against Russia. The new puppet regime of Viktor Yushchenko and the media manipulated Ukrainians into viewing Russia as their primary adversary and the West and NATO as their allies. So after the coup, Ukrainians who earlier were strongly opposed to NATO now wanted to join it. Following the establishment of the pro-Obama government in Ukraine, a campaign of ethnic cleansing started against the former leader, who was viewed as a threat by Washington. The US's plot was to create a hostile political and social climate against Russia in Kiev. The Ukrainian government was successful in circulating propaganda against Putin in a nation which once was skeptical of NATO. Another nation to become the latest victim of this pattern of the onslaught of the US is Moldova. In December last year, Russia's TASS news agency headlined, "Majority of Moldovans consider Russia country's best partner," opinion poll, and reported their findings of the Institute of Marketing and Polls in Moldova regarding the views of the public on international relations. The findings uncovered that the majority of Moldovans regarded Russia to be their best partner in the domains of politics, economy, and security. However, everything changed on January 21st after the government changed. RT News then headlined, "Moldova considers joining larger alliance." Under President Maya Sandu, the country has pursued deeper integration with the West. Now, if she is successful in becoming a part of NATO, then a presidency will be in jeopardy given the Moldovans' skepticism against the EU and NATO. Hence, nations which have taken a neutral stance, particularly in the backdrop of the Ukraine war, are being persistently hounded by the US and Europe. Apparently, strategically important and resource-rich sovereign nations are the foremost targets of the draconian assault of the West. The assertion of individuality is often perceived as a threat by Washington to its dominance, and hence it starts to use ethnic cleansing, coups, and coercion to gain influence.